The courtroom was silent. Judge Maria Alvarez was ready to sign the papers, ending a 15-year marriage and handing billionaire Anthony Kendrick the victory he demanded. His wife, Elise, was about to walk away with nothing but a gag order and a fraction of his wealth. Anthony smirked, a king casting out a commoner. The judge picked up her pen. "If there is nothing else—" "Your Honor," Elise's lawyer said, her voice cutting the silence. "There is one thing." What happened next wasn't just a divorce hearing. It was a detonation. The billionaire's wife had been quiet for 15 years, but she was about to pull out a single document that would destroy an empire built on lies. The Eyrie. That's what Anthony Kendrick called their 12,000-square-foot penthouse on Central Park West. It wasn't a home, it was a statement of altitude. From the 70th floor, the people below were just pixels, and Anthony liked it that way. He was a man who collected things, companies, rare art, and his wife, Elise. In that order. Elise Kendrick, née Vance, was 44 years old, with the bone structure of a classical statue and eyes that had long ago learned to mask her intelligence. She was once Elise Vance, a promising art historian, sharp, witty, and passionate. But for 15 years she had been Mrs. Kendrick, a role that required little more than being beautiful, silent, and available. Their life was a finely curated performance. Mornings began with Anthony reviewing the Wall Street Journal and Elise's schedule. "The Met luncheon at noon," he'd mutter, not looking up from his tablet. "Wear the blue Chanel. The diamonds, not the pearls. You look pale in pearls." "It's a fundraiser for the restoration wing, Anthony," she'd reply, her voice a soft echo in the cavernous marble kitchen. "I'm giving the keynote." "I know," he'd say, tapping his screen. "I wrote the talking points. They're on your email. Keep it under 5 minutes. And remind Director Harding that my $10 million pledge is contingent on the new wing being named the Kendrick Pavilion. Not Kendrick family, just Kendrick." He was a self-made titan, the founder of Kendrick Capital, a private equity firm that ate weaker companies for breakfast. His net worth, according to Forbes, was $5.2 billion. He had built this empire from nothing, and he never let Elise forget it. Their marriage, in the beginning, had been different. She met him when he was just Art Kendrick, a brilliantly ruthless analyst with a $100,000 salary and a $10 million ambition. He didn't have money, but he had an all-consuming hunger. She, with her old money connections and effortless grace, was his guide. She taught him which fork to use, how to pronounce Rothko, and which members of the old guard to charm. She was his social Rosetta Stone. He, in turn, had been intoxicating. He saw her, really saw her, and his ambition was a fire that warmed her. "We're a team, Elise," he'd whispered to her in their pre-war rental, sharing a bottle of wine they couldn't afford. "You're the class, I'm the horsepower. Together, we're unstoppable." He was right. They were unstoppable. But the we dissolved so slowly she almost missed it. It vanished the day he closed the K-Tech merger, his first billion-dollar deal. He came home, not to their apartment, but to the new apartment, the Eyrie, which he'd bought in cash without her knowledge. "Welcome home, baby," he'd boomed, standing in the empty white expanse. Where is our furniture?" she'd asked, confused. "In storage. Sold, maybe. I don't care. This place needs real furniture. I'm hiring a designer. That college professor junk you love isn't cutting it." "That junk, Anthony, was my grandmother's." He'd put his hands on her shoulders, his grip a little too tight, his smile a little too wide. "We're not those people anymore, Eli. I'm not that guy, and you're not that girl. You're my wife, the wife of a billionaire." start acting like it. From that day, he wasn't Art. He was Anthony Kendrick, and she became his most beautiful, most prized, and most controlled asset. The public humiliation was subtle at first. He'd correct her anecdotes at dinner parties. He'd cancel her charity events if they conflicted with his golf game. He'd manage her personal finances, giving her an allowance that, while staggering to an outsider, was a golden leash. The final straw had been the foundation gala 6 months ago. She was being honored for her work in arts education. She stepped up to the podium, her speech, the one she'd stayed up all night writing, in her hand. She looked at Anthony at the head table. He was texting, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone, looking bored. She took a breath and began. "Thank you all. When I first fell in love with art." Anthony held up a single finger, a stop gesture, without even looking up. He then stood, walked to the podium, and gently took the microphone from her hand, as if she were a child. "My wife is so passionate," he said to the glittering crowd, who chuckled appreciatively. "What she means to say is, thank you, all of you, for your support of the Kendrick Pavilion. And thank you for your checks. We'll see you at the after party." He patted her on the back, a gesture of ownership, and walked back to his seat. The applause was thunderous. Elise stood there, speech in hand, her blood turning to ice. He hadn't just interrupted her. He had erased her. He had forgotten the woman he married. He had forgotten the woman who knew how to read a balance sheet, who had helped him vet his first partners, who had sat with him at 3 a.m. while he cried in fear of his first major default. He thought she was a statue. He forgot that statues are made of stone. That night, she didn't cry. She went into her locked office, a room he never entered, and opened a safe hidden behind a 19th century landscape painting. She pulled out a simple, leather-bound folder. She ran her fingers over the embossed initials, EVK. Then, she called a number she had kept memorized for a decade. "Sophia Jenkins, attorney at law," the voice on the other end answered. "Ms. Jenkins," Elise said, her voice perfectly calm. "My name is Elise Kendrick. I believe you came highly recommended by Samuel Hayes. I'd like to schedule a consultation. It seems my husband has decided to divorce me. He just doesn't know it yet." Anthony Kendrick did not believe in doing his own dirty work. That was for the little people. He served her the papers on a Tuesday. It was, fittingly, their 15th wedding anniversary. He had, of course, forgotten. He was in Miami, attending a fintech conference, which was his new code for publicly flaunting his mistress. The mistress in question was Sienna Reed, a 22-year-old Instagram model with a vacant stare and an ironclad grasp on the value of her own youth. The page 6 headlines were brutal. Kendrick's new capital. Billionaire, 55, trades wife for new model. Elise was in the Aries breakfast nook, reading a book on Byzantine art, when the doorbell chimed. Not the private elevator chime, but the front door service chime. "Mrs. Kendrick." A man in a suit too sharp for a Tuesday morning stood there. He didn't look like a delivery man. He looked like a vulture. He was. This was Marcus the Shark Thorne, Anthony's new lawyer. The man was a legal Rottweiler, famous for making the wives of New York's wealthiest men disappear. "I am Marcus Thorne, counsel for Anthony Kendrick," he said, his voice a low, gravelly monotone. "You are being served." He didn't hand her the papers. He dropped the thick, heavy manila envelope onto the Italian marble floor between them. It landed with a sickening thud. "My client's terms are inside," Thorne continued, inspecting his cuticles. "He has been exceptionally generous, considering the circumstances. You will have 24 hours to accept the terms and sign the accompanying NDA. If you do, the funds will be wired. If you do not, we go to court." And I assure you, Mrs. Kendrick, you do not want to go to court with me." He turned and left. The heavy door clicked shut, leaving Elise alone in the foyer with the death warrant of her marriage. She didn't pick it up for a long time. When she finally did, she took it to the kitchen and opened it with the same silver letter opener Anthony used to open his stock reports. The generous offer was a one-time, non-negotiable payment of $5 million. $5 million. To the average person, a fortune. To the wife of a man worth $5.2 billion, it was a rounding error. It was what Anthony spent on watches in a year. The rest of the terms were a systematic annihilation of her life. She was to vacate the Airy within 48 hours. She was to surrender the keys to the Range Rover and the Bentley. She was to forfeit any claim to their properties in the Hamptons, Aspen, and St. Bart's. She was to forfeit any claim to the art collection, the one she had curated. And finally, the NDA. It wasn't just an agreement, it was a muzzle. She could not speak, write, or in any way imply anything about Anthony Kendrick, his business, his personal life, or the reason for their divorce, for the rest of her life. If she violated it, the $5 million was forfeit, and he would sue her into oblivion. Elise read the 80-page document twice. She then made herself a cup of tea. Her hand did not shake. When Anthony called that evening, his voice was slick with false sympathy. "Eli, you got the papers. Listen, this is for the best. We grew apart." "It happens." "Grew apart? Or did you just find a newer model, Anthony?" "Don't be crass," he snapped, his patience already gone. "Sienna has nothing to do with this. Our marriage has been dead for a decade. I'm just signing the certificate." $5 million, Anthony," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "After 15 years. After I helped you build all of this." "Build?" He laughed. The sound was dry and cruel. "You built nothing, Elise. You spent my money. You picked out paint colors. I'm giving you $5 million for 15 years of, what? Being a hostess? That's a damn good severance package. Take the deal. Sign the papers. Don't make this ugly." "Or what?" "Or," he said, his voice dropping to the register he used when he was about to gut a company, "I will bury you. I will take you to court, and I will prove, with accountants and witnesses, that you are a profligate, unstable, and vindictive woman. I will paint you as a gold digger who tried to poison my name. By the time Thorne is done with you, you won't be able to get a credit card, let alone a lunch reservation. Take the deal. It's the last act of kindness I will ever show you." He hung up. Elise looked at her phone. She felt a strange, cold calm settle over her. He was right about one thing. He was not art anymore. He was a monster. She dialed her lawyer. "Sophia, it's Elise. He served me. Thorne just left." Sophia Jenkins was the anti-Thorne. She was 35, whip-smart, and ran a boutique firm that specialized in forensic divorce. She didn't have Thorne's notoriety, but she had a bulldog's tenacity and a deep-seated hatred for bullies. "I'm on my way," Sophia said. "Don't sign anything. Don't say anything. Don't even breathe on that NDA. And Elise, turn off your phone's location tracking. He's probably already listening." When Sophia arrived at the Airy an hour later, she found Elise in her office, surrounded by packed boxes. "Are those personal effects?" Elise said. "Photographs. My mother's letters. My thesis. Things that are mine. Not his." Sophia read the settlement offer. Her face grew tighter with every page. "This is insulting. It's a joke. He's treating you like an employee." "That's what I was, Sophia. His highest paid-in perks employee." "No," Sophia said, looking up. "You were his partner. He's just forgotten. We're going to have to remind him. The problem is, he's firewalled everything. All the major assets, the houses, the jet, the art, they're all held in a series of interlocking, offshore corporate trusts. Kendrick Capital owns the plane, which is leased by K Holdings, which owns the art. It's a fortress. He's very good at building fortresses, Elise said. Our only way through, Sophia said, tapping her pen, is to prove commingling of assets or spousal contribution. But he's been planning this. He's been separating his finances from yours for years. The allowance, the separate credit cards. It was all strategic. The only thing that could blow this wide open is a prenuptial agreement. Sophia looked at her client. Anthony's team has already filed a motion stating, for the record, that no prenuptial agreement exists. Elise, is there one? Elise met her lawyer's gaze. Her face was a perfect, placid mask. Anthony Kendrick, Elise said slowly, insists we never signed one. Sophia's face fell. Then this is going to be the fight of our lives. I know, Elise said, closing a box. Get your armor ready. The next 3 months were a descent into hell. Anthony Kendrick, true to his word, decided to make it ugly. He didn't just fight. He waged a war of psychological attrition. First, he froze her credit cards, every single one. Elise went to buy groceries at Whole Foods and was declined. The humiliation was sharp, public, and meticulously engineered. He cut off her allowance, leaving her with only the money she had in her personal checking account, a sum Sophia Jenkins had immediately advised her to withdraw and place in escrow. Next, he filed a motion to have her evicted from the Eyrie. Sophia countered, but Thorne's team buried them in paperwork, claiming Elise was an unstable presence and a danger to the property's assets, i.e., the art. The judge, an interim family court magistrate who was clearly intimidated by Thorne's reputation, granted Anthony temporary exclusive access to the property. Elise was given 24 hours to leave her home of 15 years. She left with 3 suitcases and her mother's letters. Sophia Jenkins found her a modest, furnished rental in the West Village, paid for by the retainer Elise had given her. Then came the smear campaign. It started as whispers, then became shouts. Anonymous sources began leaking stories to the press. Page 6 ran a story titled Elise's Extravagance, detailing her out-of-control spending. While Art was building his empire, Elise was spending it, the source claimed. We're talking $100,000 a month on clothes, $50,000 on wellness, whatever that is. He had to cut her off. She was bleeding him dry. It was a brilliant, cruel narrative. Hemdwith or 250, altere a high-end receipt, showing a large sum for clothing or wellness products as $5.2 billion, painting her as the financially irresponsible one. The articles conveniently forgot to mention that he demanded she look the part, that he was the one who insisted she fly to Paris for fittings. He had turned her obedience into a weapon against her. But the worst part was the deposition. It was held in Marcus Thorne's sterile, glass-walled conference room. Anthony was there, sitting at the head of the table, not even bothering to look at her. He was checking stock tickers on his phone. Thorne, Elise, and Sophia sat at the table. A court stenographer was present. "Please state your name for the record," Thorne began. "Elise Vance Kendrick." "Occupation?" Elise paused. "I'm a philanthropist and art historian." Thorne let out a small, contemptuous chuckle. "A philanthropist? Is that what you call spending your husband's money? Mrs. Kendrick, what was your last paid position?" "I was an associate curator at the Guggenheim." "When did you leave that position?" "In 2009. The year you married Mr. Kendrick. Convenient. And in the 15 years since, what exactly has been your tangible contribution to the marital estate. This was the heart of it. In a no-fault state like New York, assets are divided equitably. But equitable is a very flexible word. Thorne's strategy was to prove her contribution was zero, making Anthony's $5 million offer seem more than equitable. "I managed our homes," Elise began, her voice steady. "You mean you managed the staff?" Thorne cut in. "I curated the Kendrick art collection, valued at over $400 million. "You mean you shopped?" Thorne sneered. "Mr. Kendrick's financial advisors made the purchases. You simply told them where to hang the paintings." "I built our social and political network. I hosted every fundraiser. I sat on 3 boards. I entertained senators, CEOs, and foreign dignitaries. I was the face of the Kendrick brand." "So," Thorne leaned in, his voice dropping, "you were a hostess, a party planner, and for this, you believe you are entitled to billions?" Anthony laughed, a short, barking sound. Sophia Jenkins finally spoke. "Objection. Counsel is badgering the witness and characterizing her testimony." "It's a deposition, Ms. Jenkins. There's no judge. I'm just getting the facts." Thorne smiled. "Let's talk about the K-Tech merger, Mrs. Kendrick. Were you in the room when your husband negotiated that?" "No." "Did you analyze the financials? Did you fly to Hong Kong to meet the investors?" "No." "Did you do anything other than pick out the taupe or beige paint for the walls of his office?" "This is over," Sophia said, standing up. "We're done for the day." Elise and Sophia walked out. In the elevator, Elise was silent, but her hands were shaking. "He's going to win, isn't he?" she whispered. "He's painting a picture, and it's working." "He's painting a caricature, Elise," Sophia said, though she looked worried. "It's all noise to pressure us into taking the settlement. He's claiming all his wealth is separate property, because it's tied to his company, Kendrick Capital, which he owned before the marriage. He's claiming the $5 billion growth is all his." "But it wasn't," Elise said. "He was worth $50 million when we married. I was there." "I know," Sophia said, as the elevator doors opened. "But without a document that says otherwise, it's your word against his. And in this town, his word is worth $5.2 billion. We're going to the mat, Elise, but I need to be honest. This is the worst-case scenario. He's locked us out completely." Elise stepped out onto the grey New York street. She looked up at the towering skyscrapers. She felt small, invisible, erased. "Don't worry, Sophia," Elise said, pulling her coat tighter. "He's very, very confident. He thinks he's thought of everything. Hasn't he?" "Almost," Elise said, a strange, hard light in her eyes. "He's forgotten one person, and that's his mistake." Anthony Kendrick was not a man given to reflection, but he was a man who appreciated irony. And the irony of signing his wife's eviction papers from his new $30 million beachfront condo in Miami, while his 22-year-old mistress fed him a grape, was not lost on him. It was, in a word, perfect. "Are you sure she's gone?" Sienna Reed asked, her voice a vocal fried purr. She was lying on a white leather chaise, wearing a bikini that seemed to be held together by wishful thinking. "Thorne's office confirmed the locks were changed at 3 p.m., Anthony said, signing the last document with a flourish. "The Elise era is officially over." "Good," Sienna said, pouting. "I hate that apartment. It's so dark, all that old-looking art. We should sell it all and get something modern, something shiny." "Whatever you want, kitten," Anthony said, already bored with the conversation. Sienna giggled and went back to her phone, taking a selfie. "But Artie, are you sure she can't, get anything? My friend's sister's cousin, she's an influencer, and she said her ex tried to get half her followers in the divorce. These old wives are vicious." Anthony put down his pen and looked at her. His smile was reptilian. "Sienna, let me explain something to you, so you never have to worry your pretty little head again. A man like me doesn't lose. I don't lose at the market. I don't lose in negotiations, and I do not lose a divorce. I am insulated. I am protected. I am a fortress. But the prenup. She must have a prenup, right?" "No," Anthony said, his voice flat and final. "There is no prenup." And he believed it, because he had destroyed it. He thought back to 15 years ago. It was the only mistake he'd ever made, and one he'd corrected with fire. It was 2 weeks before their wedding. He was worth a respectable $50 million. He wasn't a billionaire yet, but he could smell it. He was high on his own success. His lawyer at the time, a stuffy, old-school attorney named Samuel Hayes, had insisted on a prenup. "Anthony, the girl is lovely," Hayes had said, his glasses perched on his nose. "But you are on a rocket. She is not. Protect your assets." Anthony had agreed. He'd had Thorne's predecessor draw up the standard, ironclad, "what's mine is mine" document. He presented it to Elise in their apartment, expecting, perhaps, a few tears. He got a negotiation. "Anthony," she'd said, reading it calmly, "this seems fair, but it's incomplete." He'd been taken aback. "Incomplete? It's a standard document, Eli." "No," she said, looking him straight in the eye. "It protects what you have. It does nothing to acknowledge what we're going to build. You said it yourself. We're a team." He'd been charmed and arrogant. He was so sure of his own genius, he saw her counter-proposal as cute. She'd come back with her own lawyer, a name he couldn't even remember, and a single addendum. She called it the partnership clause. It was simple, really. She waived all rights to his current $50 million. That was his. She waived all rights to alimony. She wanted nothing if they failed. But the clause stated, in recognition of her contributions as partner, social strategist, and household manager, she would be entitled to 30% of the increase in value of Kendrick Capital from the date of marriage to the date of dissolution. He'd laughed. 30% of the growth? You're ambitious, I'll give you that. I'm betting on you, Art, she'd said, smiling, just like you're betting on you. If your company doesn't grow, I get nothing. If it does, it's because we made it happen. You're the horsepower. I'm the class. Remember? He was high on champagne, high on her, high on himself. It was the ultimate gamble. And he loved to gamble. He signed it. Whatever you want, my love, he'd said, kissing her. He saw it as a romantic gesture, a sign of his magnificent confidence. The document was signed, notarized by Samuel Hayes, and one copy was given to each lawyer. Then, 5 years passed. Kendrick Capital didn't just grow, it exploded. The $50 million became $500 million, then $1 billion, then 2, and Anthony remembered the clause. He remembered it at 3 a.m. one night. He sat bolt upright in bed. 30% of the growth. He'd done the math. He was worth $2 billion, nor 30% of that was unconscionable. It was a ticking time bomb. He'd restructured the next day. He fired Samuel Hayes, calling him old-fashioned and not aggressive enough. He hired Marcus Thorne's firm, a hungry, amoral operation that understood plausible deniability. He told Thorne he wanted to consolidate all his archived corporate documents. This included, of course, the prenup. Hayes's office, legally obligated, transferred the file. The file, along with 24 other boxes of old contracts, was moved to a secure storage facility in New Jersey, a facility that, 3 weeks later, suffered a catastrophic electrical fire. It was a perfect, clean burn. The insurance claim was a minor inconvenience. Anthony Kendrick himself had confirmed it. The only 2 existing copies of the prenuptial agreement were gone forever. He'd even asked Elise casually a year later, "Honey, you remember that crazy prenup we signed? Do you still have your copy? I think mine got lost in an office move." She'd looked up from her book. "Honestly, Anthony, I don't even remember where I put it. It was so long ago. Does it matter?" He'd smiled. "No, not at all." She was a statue, beautiful, placid, and dumb. Now in Miami, he looked at Sienna. "No prenup," he repeated, more firmly this time. "There is nothing. The marriage is over, and I have everything. I've won." Sienna squealed and kissed him. "Oh, I love when you're so dominant. Now, about that black card." Anthony smiled and handed her his wallet. He had built a fortress, and the walls were a mile high. The day of the final hearing was a media circus. This wasn't just a divorce, it was a public execution. The narrative Anthony had woven had stuck. Elise was the grasping gold digger, and Anthony was the long-suffering husband finally cutting the dead weight. The New York family court, room 301, was packed. Sienna Reed was in the front row, wearing a demure, for her, black dress, her sunglasses perched on her head. She was there to claim her prize. Marcus Thorne was at the defense table, looking as relaxed as if he were at a Sunday brunch, shuffling papers. Anthony Kendrick strode in like he owned the place. He was wearing a dark blue $10,000 Savile Row suit, a power uniform. He nodded to the press, smiled at Sienna, and sat down. He didn't once look at Elise. Elise and Sophia Jenkins were already seated at the plaintiff's table. Elise wore a simple grey wool dress. She had no jewelry, save her simple gold wedding band, which she had pointedly kept on. She looked small, pale, and defeated. "All rise," the bailiff called. Judge Maria Alvarez entered. She was a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, known for her sharp mind and her utter impatience for courtroom theatrics. She had seen more billionaire divorces than she could count, and she was immune to their posturing. She sat, adjusted her glasses, and looked at the reams of paper before her. Case 301B, Kendrick vs. Kendrick. This is the final hearing on the dissolution of marriage and division of assets. I have read the preliminary reports. I have read the settlement offer from the defendant. I have read the plaintiff's objections. Frankly, Ms. Jenkins, I'm not seeing what you're objecting to. Your client is being offered $5 million, and by all accounts, the defendant's primary assets, namely Kendrick Capital, are separate property, owned prior to the marriage. Unless you have something new, we are going to enforce the offer and finalize this dissolution. It was a knockout blow, delivered in the first 30 seconds. Anthony Kendrick smirked. He leaned over to Thorne and whispered something. Thorne chuckled. Sophia Jenkins stood. Her hands were steady on the lectern. "Your Honor, we appreciate the court's efficiency, but the defendant's entire case rests on a lie they have repeated in depositions, in filings, and in the press." Thorne shot to his feet. "Objection. Your Honor, Ms. Jenkins is grandstanding. This is a desperate, last-ditch attempt to malign my client. She has no evidence, no grounds." "Is that a fact, Mr. Thorne?" Judge Alvarez said, her eyes narrowing. "Are you stating, for the record, that your client's assets are all separate property?" "Absolutely, Your Honor," Thorne said, full of confidence. Kendrick Capital was founded in 2007. The marriage was in 2009. The math is simple. There is no commingling. And, as we have stated multiple times, there is no prenuptial agreement. "We ask the court," Thorne continued, turning to address the room, "to sanction the plaintiff for this egregious waste of time and to enforce the generous $5 million settlement, which my client is now considering reducing due to this baseless slander." Anthony's smirk widened. He had her. She was finished. The judge looked at Sophia. "Ms. Jenkins." You've heard Mr. Thorne. This case hinges on one fact. He says there is no prenup. You have provided no evidence of one. The burden of proof is on you. What do you have to say?" The courtroom was dead silent. Elise looked down at her hands. Sophia Jenkins took a deep breath. "Your Honor," Sophia said, her voice clear and carrying to every corner of the room. "Mr. Thorne is correct. His entire case does hinge on that fact. He and his client, Mr. Kendrick, have built a fortress of lies on that one single foundational claim." "Where is it, Miss Jenkins?" the judge snapped, her patience gone. "If you have a document, produce it. Otherwise, I am signing this order." "I do not have it, Your Honor," Sophia said. Thorne laughed out loud. "Then we're done here." "I do not have it," Sophia repeated, "because my client does. Elise?" For the first time all day, Elise moved. She did not look like a victim. She looked like a general. She reached into the simple, worn briefcase at her feet. She pulled out a single, leather-bound folder. It was old, embossed with the initials EVK. She stood, walked past Sophia, and placed it on the lectern. "Your Honor," Elise said, her voice no longer a whisper, but a resonant, powerful statement. "My husband is a very, very smart man, but he has a terrible memory." Anthony's face, for the first time, registered confusion. The smirk wavered. "Ms. Jenkins," the judge said, "what is this?" "It is," Sophia said, "an original, wet ink, notarized copy of the prenuptial agreement between Anthony Kendrick and Elise Vance, dated May 4th, 2009. The air was sucked out of the room. Marcus Thorne's face, usually a mask of smug control, went slack. "What? That's impossible. That's a fabrication." Anthony Kendrick shot up from his chair. "She's lying. That's a fake. We produced every document. There was a fire." The outburst echoed in the stunned silence. Anthony had just said the quiet part out loud. His eyes widened, realizing his mistake. Judge Alvarez slammed her gavel. "Order! Mr. Kendrick, you will sit down and be silent, or I will have you removed. Mr. Thorne, your client's outburst is now on the record. Bailiff, please retrieve the document from Ms. Jenkins." The bailiff took the folder and handed it to Judge Alvarez. She opened it. She read the first page, then the second. Her eyebrows climbed higher and higher over the rim of her glasses. She read for a full, agonizing minute. The only sound was the clicking of the court stenographer's keyboard. Finally she looked up, not at the lawyers, but at Anthony Kendrick. Her expression was one of pure, unadulterated disgust. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice dangerously cold, "you stated for the record, under penalty of perjury, that no such document existed." I was informed by my client. We were under the impression it was destroyed," Thorne stammered, his shark persona dissolving into that of a confused guppy. "So you knew it existed?" the judge snapped. "You just thought it was gone. You've been lying to this court for 3 months. Your Honor." "Silence," the judge commanded. She turned to Anthony. "Mr. Kendrick, you built your entire case on this lie. You submitted false declarations. You froze your wife's assets based on this lie. You tried to have her evicted based on this lie." "It's a fake!" Anthony roared, his face turning a blotchy purple. I never would have..." "Would have what, Mr. Kendrick?" Sophia Jenkins asked, standing up. "Would have signed it? Because this appears to be your signature." Judge Alvarez handed the document to the bailiff, who passed it to Anthony's table. Thorne and Anthony huddled over it. Anthony stared at his own, arrogant, looping signature from 15 years ago. It was unmistakably his. "Your Honor," Thorne said, desperately trying to regain control. We contest the authenticity of this document. It could be forged. We demand a handwriting expert. Oh, we've already thought of that, Sophia Jenkins said, pulling a second, thicker document from her briefcase. We were hoping you'd contest it. Your Honor, this is a sworn 40-page affidavit from Mr. Samuel Hayes, Mr. Kendrick's original corporate lawyer. If Anthony was pale before, he was now translucent. The name Samuel Hayes hit him like a physical blow. It seems, Your Honor, Sophia continued, her voice ringing with newfound power, that Mr. Hayes was a very meticulous man. When Mr. Kendrick fired him so abruptly in 2014, Mr. Hayes felt uneasy. He suspected his former client might engage in unethical business practices. So, while he transferred the official file to Mr. Kendrick's new firm, the file that was conveniently destroyed, he had, as a matter of personal security, retained a fully notarized and certified third copy of the agreement. He kept it in his personal bank vault for over a decade, just in case. Sophia smiled. He was quite pleased to hear from us. His affidavit confirms the date, the time, the place, and the mental state of both parties. He has also included his original, contemporaneous notes from the negotiation. Judge Alvarez looked at the affidavit. This is thorough. And finally, Your Honor, Sophia said, the document itself. If Mr. Thorne would bother to read it instead of just staring at the signature. Thorne's eyes scanned the document. He stopped. He read a sentence. He read it again. He looked at Anthony, his face ashen. Anthony, what is this? Partnership clause? Read it aloud, Mr. Thorne, the judge commanded. Thorne's voice shook as he read. In recognition of Elise Vance's contribution to the future growth of Kendrick Capital, in the event of dissolution, she shall be entitled to 30% of the increase in value of the corporate entity from the date of marriage. A collective gasp went up from the gallery. Sienna Reed, in the front row, was frantically typing on her phone's calculator. Kendrick Capital was valued at $50 million on the date of marriage, Sophia Jenkins provided, helpfully. It is currently, by Mr. Kendrick's own filings, valued at $5.2 billion. The math was simple. The growth was $5.15 billion, 30% of $5.15 billion. It wasn't $5 million, it was $1.45 billion. Anthony Kendrick sank into his chair. He looked at Elise. She was not smiling. She was not triumphant. She was simply watching him. She had been quiet, she had been patient, and she had waited. She had let him build his own gallows. She had let him lie under oath to a federal judge. She had let him bury himself so deep that he would never, ever climb out. She had done exactly what she'd told him she would do 15 years ago. She had bet on him. And she had just collected. The courtroom didn't just break, it detonated. A strangled animal sound ripped from Anthony Kendrick's throat as the words $1.45 billion hung in the air. A guillotine released. It wasn't just the number. It was the public, catastrophic, undeniable loss. No, he screamed, his voice cracking, his face a mottled, terrifying shade of purple. He shot up from his chair, scattering billion-dollar legal pads. She's lying! It's a forgery! A setup! You can't do this! Marcus Thorne, the shark, was already in motion, but not toward his client. He was grabbing his briefcase, his face ashen, his professional life flashing before his eyes. Your Honor, I had no knowledge. This is a criminal conspiracy. I was defrauded by my own client. I resign as counsel, effective immediately. You're not going anywhere, Mr. Thorne. Judge Alvarez's voice was a thunderclap, her gavel striking the dais with such force that the room flinched into a momentary, shocked silence. "You have been an officer of this court for 30 years. You are on the record. You will sit down. Both of you." In the front row, Sienna Reed had her phone out. Her face was a mask of pure panic. She wasn't just watching a divorce. She was watching her black card get declined, her future evaporate. As the first reporter from Page 6 turned a camera on her, she bolted, shoving past a sketch artist and fleeing the courtroom, her high heels clacking in a desperate, undignified rhythm. "Bailiff," Judge Alvarez commanded, her voice now deadly calm. "Restrain Mr. Kendrick. He is in contempt." Two large bailiffs, who had been watching the scene with weary experience, moved in. They didn't grab him, but their presence, their hands resting on their belts, was a physical wall. Anthony's rage collapsed instantly, replaced by a wet, pathetic terror. The Titan was gone. Only the man remained, and he was terrified. He saw Elise. She was standing, her briefcase in hand, ready to leave. "Elise!" he pleaded, his voice now a desperate, whining whisper. The bailiffs paused, letting him have this last moment of humiliation. "Elise, baby, wait. We can fix this. We can talk. This is crazy. Don't listen to them. I'll give you $100 million cash. Right now. $200 million. Just tell her you made it up. Tell her it's a joke. We can go back. Please." Elise looked at him. She saw the man she had met 15 years ago, the one with fire in his eyes and a hunger to build. And she saw the monster he had become, the one who would burn the world down just to prove he was holding the match. There was no triumph in her eyes, only a deep, profound, and final release. She took 2 steps toward him, closing the distance. The bailiffs tensed. Anthony looked at her, hope flickering in his terrified eyes. "The time for deals is over, Anthony," she said, her voice soft, but carrying with the terrible finality of a closing coffin. "You taught me a very valuable lesson, one that you yourself forgot." "What?" he whispered. "Always read the fine print." She turned. She did not look back. She walked out of the courtroom, her spine straight, her steps measured. The courtroom doors opened, and a blinding wall of camera flashes erupted from the hallway. The press descended like sharks. But Elise, who had entered the courtroom a shadow, walked into the light, her face a mask of serene, unbreakable calm. She was, for the first time in 15 years, free. Back inside, Judge Alvarez put her glasses back on. The fire was gone, replaced by the cold, precise machinery of the law. "With the room finally silent," she said, her words now officially on the record, "let's be clear on what has happened here. Mr. Kendrick, Mr. Thorne, you have not just wasted this court's time. You have, with malice and forethought, attempted to perpetrate a fraud upon it. You have lied in sworn depositions. You have submitted falsified declarations. You have systematically and cruelly tried to use the power of your wealth to erase a 15-year partner in a marriage. It is the most egregious display of judicial contempt I have seen in my career." She looked at Sophia Jenkins. "Ms. Jenkins, your client's document has been verified by the notary's seal, which is still active, and by the accompanying affidavit from Mr. Samuel Hayes. This prenuptial agreement is found to be valid, binding, and ironclad." She turned back to Anthony, who had collapsed into his chair, a broken, wheezing shell. "Therefore I am ruling as follows," the judge continued, her voice ticking off the end of his life as he knew it. 1. The settlement offer of $5 million is rejected. 2. The prenuptial agreement is enforced in full. The marital estate, defined as the growth of Kendrick capital, from $50 million to its current $5.2 billion is $5.15 billion. The plaintiff, Elise Vance Kendrick, is awarded her 30% share, totaling $1,145,000. The number, spoken again, made Anthony physically sick. 3. Due to Mr. Kendrick's profound bad faith and his attempts to hide assets and defraud this court, I am signing an immediate ex parte order, freezing all assets, personal, corporate, and trust, of Anthony Kendrick and Kendrick Capital, effective immediately. You, sir, she said, pointing her pen at him, cannot sell a stock, move a dollar, or even use your credit card without approval from this court. 4. I am appointing a neutral third-party receiver to take temporary control of Kendrick Capital. They will conduct a full, independent forensic audit to ensure no further assets have been concealed and to manage the liquidation necessary to pay this judgment. You, Mr. Kendrick, are hereby barred from your own office. Anthony stared, uncomprehending. He had been locked out of his own kingdom. And 5, the judge said, her eyes now flinty and hard. I am referring this entire matter, including Mr. Kendrick's testimony and Mr. Thorne's filed declarations, to the U.S. Attorney's Office and the New York State Bar for criminal investigation into perjury, conspiracy to commit fraud, and obstruction of justice. Thorne, the man who had built a career on intimidation, put his head in his hands. It was over. The aftermath was not a single event. It was a meticulous, brutal dissection. The receivers, a team from PricewaterhouseCoopers, descended on Kendrick Capital. They unwound the labyrinth of shell corporations Anthony had built to hide his wealth. They found accounts in the Caymans, in Panama, in Switzerland, pots of gold he had hidden, not just from the IRS, but from Elise. The audit revealed the most damning truth of all. The $5.2 billion valuation was a lie. It was what he reported. The real value, with the hidden offshore assets, was closer to $8.2 billion. The judgment was recalculated. The growth wasn't $5.15 billion. It was $8.15 billion. Elise's 30% was not $1.5 billion. It was $245 billion. To pay the judgment, the receiver was forced to do the unthinkable, sell Anthony's controlling stake in Kendrick Capital, the company he had bled for. The empire he had built on the bones of his competitors was put on the auction block. Anthony Kendrick, now out on bail and facing a 15-count federal indictment, was forced to watch, powerless. He was a ghost in his own life. The New York Post ran a brutal photo of him, 60 pounds heavier, in a stained polo shirt, outside a nondescript rented condo in Tampa, Florida. He was a king in exile. Marcus the Shark. Thorne was disbarred by the New York Bar Association in a unanimous, scathing decision. His name was physically scraped from the marble lobby of the firm he had founded. And the company? Kendrick Capital. A mysterious, quiet European holding company, Vance Equity, won the bidding war. The Wall Street Journal ran a small, curious piece on the new, unknown firm. It took them 3 weeks to discover the principal owner, the one who had signed the final papers. Elise Vance. She hadn't just taken his money. She had taken his company. She didn't keep it. She wasn't a shark. She was a builder. Over the next 6 months, she did what Anthony never could. She liquidated the entire company, breaking it up and selling its assets to its more ethical competitors, ensuring every employee received a generous severance. She took her $2.4 billion, paid her taxes, and vanished. 1 year later, the Metropolitan Museum of Art held a gala. It wasn't the usual, stuffy affair. It was the opening of a new, permanent wing, the Vance Foundation Center for Emerging Art. The foundation, endowed with $1.5 billion, had a two-pronged mission: to provide legal aid to women trapped in abusive, high-stakes divorces, and to fund a new generation of artists, specifically women, who had been overlooked by the mainstream Kendrick-style collectors. A young reporter from the New York Times found the foundation's founder by a stunning, massive canvas, painted by an unknown artist from Brooklyn. Elise was in a simple navy blue dress, her hair cut shorter. She wasn't wearing a single diamond. She was laughing, her face open and bright. The ice was gone. "Ms. Vance," the reporter asked, "you've become a symbol for so many. After everything you went through, what's your advice?" Elise turned, her smile not for a camera, but for the woman. She paused, looking around the room, filled not with billionaires but with artists, lawyers, students, and survivors. "My advice?" she said. "For 15 years I was told my contribution was social. I was a hostess. I was a party planner. I was told I spent money. I didn't earn it. I believed it. That was my mistake." She leaned in, her voice warm but strong. "My advice is simple. Know your worth, even if he's the only one who's forgotten it. And always, always, keep your own copy. A lie can build an empire, but the truth, no matter how long it's buried, will always bring it down." Anthony Kendrick thought he was a king, but he forgot the cardinal rule: never underestimate the person who was there from the beginning. He saw a trophy. He forgot he'd married a partner. Elise didn't just win a divorce. She reclaimed her life, her name, and her power. And she did it by using his own arrogance against him. A $1.5 billion lesson. What did you think of Anthony's catastrophic mistake? Was Elise's plan a brilliant act of survival or cold-blooded revenge? Let us know in the comments below. If you love stories of justice, where the overlooked finally get their day, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who loves a good underdog story. And most importantly, if you want more true-life dramas and incredible twists, subscribe and ring that bell. You won't want to miss the story we have for you next week.